Hi Chris, how are you?
Good morning, Rod. I'm well. Here we are, episode 160. It's a good round number, isn't it? 160.
It's a nice round number.
And you took this morning to tell me that I sounded awful. It took you 160 episodes to build up to the fact my voice is horrible, which I appreciate the honesty, so it was good. It's the 16th of February for those out there that are listening, and it's 2025 in case you're listening from the future.
Oh, well, that can happen with podcasts, I believe.
Apparently so. Who knew that media could be consumed at different times other than the week it came out?
Yeah, I'm always slightly surprised at people who don't give the date in their podcasts.
Yeah, it's quite good, isn't it, just to have that point of reference, I think.
I think so. I mean, if you were listening to this 10 years from now and you thought, God, Chris sounds even worse now, that would explain why.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. He sounds even worse. Will we still be going in 10 years' time? Oof. We'd have both had some milestone birthdays in that period.
Well, yeah, 10 years from now, I guess it would be, wouldn't it? Yeah, let's not think about that. Should we talk about the weather briefly?
Yeah, it's a February day. Sadly, there's a lack of sun coming. Sometimes we get a bit of sun about now, and you just get not hot, but warm here in the UK. And it's half term for most parents, I guess, for their children. So my kids are off for a week, and I am not.
Lucky them, and not so lucky you, I guess.
Yeah, quite. I don't mind. I love my kids, but I'll be at home a little bit working, so that's quite nice. I get to see them a little bit more, like when I go out for lunch and all of that. So it's not too bad, and I'm around. So I'm quite fortunate, I guess. I am in my kids' lives quite a lot while they're young and impressionable.
Yeah, enjoy it while you've got it. Although my eldest is back at the moment. She needs a little bit of assistance with her university dissertation, and it involves a little bit of coding in my world. So I'm here, she's here. I'm just trying to sort of talk her through some bits and pieces. So we'll see how that goes. But it's led to some Mac stuff actually for R studio and a bit of homebrew on her computer, as well as what I'm doing for her in the broader scheme of things. But that's been quite interesting.
Cool. Well, that's cool. It's always nice to have the grown-up daughters back. They're adults now, aren't they? So it's quite different for you.
They are adults, and one's being extremely adult, and the other one just needs a little bit of help, which I'm more than happy to give, because let's face it, it's very much in my wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's true. It's good, isn't it, when you can actually use some of your knowledge to impart upon them.
Yeah, might be a bit too much sometimes. Should we do some follow-up?
Let's do it. Let's dive straight into follow-up. So we've got AirPods Pro volume increases automatically in the wind. Yeah,
so I don't know if you've noticed this. You wear AirPods Pro, I wear AirPods Pro. There was always talk about various modes that have been added to them over the years and all the rest of it. And I don't even know what mode mine are in. I think it's the cut out all the sound around me. It's not the adaptive, it's not the transparency mode where people come up and talk to you. And it mutes, because I'd talk to the dog and it would mute, and I didn't want that to happen when I was out trundling around. But for the first time ever, I noticed it was quite a windy day yesterday when I was walking the dog in the park. Big gust of wind, and the podcast I was listening to, the volume dynamically increased during the wind. That's the first time I've ever noticed that happen.
Yeah, I've probably noticed it more. I don't get as much wind as you. I'm not on the coast, but I notice it more when you walk on a busy street and a car goes past and the volume rises. I don't know if I like it or not. I get why they do it, because you listen to your podcast and you still hear the words. So I'm mixed on it, if I'm honest. And I often just listen just in normal mode, in essence, because I usually just have one in. If I'm going out for a walk, I usually just put one in, so I'm a bit more with my surroundings, I guess. Occasionally I put two in and go for complete zone out, but yeah, one's my preferred at the moment, I think.
Yeah, I quite liked it, I got to say. It's often very windy here, and it has annoyed me before that I can't quite hear what's going on, particularly on the beach. So, no, this was good, and like I say, first time I've ever noticed it, so something changed. Maybe I got a firmware update. It's that whole process of how you get firmware updates in your AirPods is completely opaque to me. Although I think there was a tech note about it recently.
There was a tech note how you can invoke it. You charge them and you put them near each other and it auto installs.
Yeah, all right. So magic happened that Apple blessed me with, and my AirPods now work as intended.
Yeah, I think there's some great features in the AirPods Pro. That AirPods 2 line is fantastic. The amount of functionality that they've added post go live is really good.
At some point, it might be worth talking about the hearing aid thing, that what we've got in the UK in terms of a hearing test and hearing aids with AirPods Pro.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We should both do the test and report back.
Fine. Good. Okay. Moving on. Just another thing in life, is this sort of follow-up more than anything. I think certainly my annoyance with Amazon and Google and other big companies and their DEI stuff that's going in America is approaching fever pitch. So this week I decided, having got rid of Netflix a couple of weeks ago, although that was price increases more than their DEI policies.
Yeah, I can understand that.
I would try not to use quite so much Amazon. So as an experiment, I had a broken charger by the side of the bed for charging up my phone and my watch. Wouldn't work anymore, so I thought, right, time to replace it. Now my normal course of action would be fire on Amazon, next day delivery, Ugreen or Anchor charger, whatever would arrive through the post, and off I'd go. But I thought, no, I won't do this. What's the hassle to do this through Argos? I don't know about the last time you used Argos.
I've used it a little bit with my children, actually. So maybe we should explain what Argos is. Argos, for people listening, is a company here in the UK. It's owned by the Sainsbury's supermarket chain. And it used to be, 20 years ago, you'd go into Argos and you'd get their catalogue. You'd take the catalogue home, you'd pore over it because there'd be Walkmans, iPods. You'd have all of that tech. You'd have kids' toys, you'd have jewellery, you'd have saucepans, things around the home. So you'd have everything in it. And you'd go into your Argos, you type the little number in, everything had a unique number, and you could see if they had stock. Or you could give it to them at the till, and then they'd tell you if they had stock, and they'd have a big warehouse on the high street, and you'd pick it up in essence. And then obviously it's gone a bit more online since then, and it's a bit more Amazon-esque. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. A bit more Amazon-esque in as much as you don't really go for the catalogue anymore, you look online. And most Sainsbury's supermarkets, which are a big Walmart sort of level supermarket, maybe slightly higher end up the chain than Walmart might be in America, as does probably closer to Walmart for us, although they're not the same thing anymore, where you could go and collect things. So my experience was, don't order from Amazon, go and see how much it was. It was £22 for a 65-watt GAN charger, so comparable fast charger, 2 USB-Cs, 1 USB-A shaped hole for fast charging as well, which I think will only do 20 watts. That might be a limitation of that shape of plug, I'm not sure. So it was cheap, and it was there by 4 o'clock, so I could just walk to the shop and get it effectively. So really impressed, basically.
That's cool. Did you get it delivered to a local Sainsbury's to you then?
Yeah, my local Sainsbury's. I could have had it next day delivery I didn't even look at the delivery charge because I happened to be going to Sainsbury's anyway. So it all worked out quite nicely, really, and it's made me think that sort of default. If I go to Amazon and shop, it won't be that hard in many cases to just ignore, I think.
Yeah, potentially. And it's a good way of thinking, isn't it? It's a bit more work for me. I'd have to go into the next town. It's about half an hour. But yeah, I can understand why you'd want to do that. So you're right. We should, for those of us in the UK, start shopping in our own stores rather than in the American conglomerate.
Yeah, absolutely. And if it's something even more local again, like your local butcher or baker or that kind of stuff, then that's to the good as well. I mean, we talk about the death of the high street, but we contribute to it all the time by, the default option. If it's so easy just to have Amazon or whoever deliver your stuff, then I think it's worth thinking about.
No, I completely agree. I always try and shop local to me to help keep the shops going. I support all the shops in the small village where I live.
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Should we move on and talk about some stuff not related to us?
Social media lifespans. I'm curious to see what this is going to be.
I just thought this was interesting. So there's a great social media account and website called Information is Beautiful. Actually, the guy who writes it used to be a computer games writer. David McCandless was his name, for Zap64 and things like that back in the day. All the people who used to write for that have gone on to do interesting things. He was a computer games journalist. So this guy is very interested in representation of data, which is obviously very much in what I do in my work a lot of the time. It's not always a table. A graph can speak 1,000 words. And I thought this was just an interesting sort of overview of social media hype, where you look at something like MySpace and it sort of references on Google's in the early 2000s, and how you had that massive spike up to it and then nothing since about 2012, unsurprisingly, because Facebook took over. And you look at these websites, MySpace, Friendster, Flickr, Twitter, Tumblr. Facebook has kept the curve going longer, but even as you look at that now, as we get towards 2025, it's tailed off a lot from its peak, hasn't it?
Yeah, massively. It's quite interesting, actually, because Facebook's still quite a dominant platform. Well, it certainly feels like it, but obviously it's nowhere near what it used to be.
No, but then you look at something like an Instagram, which actually seems to be, at the moment at least, maintaining that sort of interest over a longer period of time.
Yeah, and if you compare the Instagram graph to the Facebook graph, obviously Facebook bought it at the right time. They were declining, Instagram's going up. Boom, they've patched the hole.
Yeah, and this is not completely representative. YouTube looks like it's declining, but I suspect what's happened is you don't need to Google for YouTube because it's built into your TV, or you've already got it bookmarked, or whatever the case may be on there. But the rest of them, very interesting.
Well, a lot of people use YouTube as they Google, don't they? They go to YouTube and search for whatever they're looking for there.
Yeah, and it just gets popped up, doesn't it, in the search? But I think this is a fascinating sort of way of looking at these things, just for traffic on Google for how these things, which is probably reasonably representative for lots of these things. Yeah, I suspect, Facebook has an app. You don't necessarily need to Google for Facebook, but as a way of getting new users and interest in a platform, or journalists looking for certain things, then you'd expect that to sort of pop up. And look at LinkedIn as a comparison. It tails off. I presume in sort of late 2020, I don't know when Microsoft bought LinkedIn, but it was probably around there when they really started shoving it quite aggressively in people's faces, and you see that sort of increase in it as well.
Yeah, it's quite. LinkedIn is, looking at it, it's probably been the most sustained, consistent platform on average of all of them there.
Well, I think it's had longer in the market, but if you look at like Reddit, the way it's increased, that's been, that's word of mouth more than anything else that's caused that increase. And if you look at all of them had a sharp increase.
Yeah.
But Pinterest goes off up a cliff, which is really unusual, and maintains that. So it's not just LinkedIn that has it.
No, that's fair. LinkedIn's quite interesting though. There's not real competition for LinkedIn. There's not many corporate places you go. It is just LinkedIn. And Pinterest is super interesting because I personally don't consume it or hear much about it, but it's obviously doing very well.
Yep. Fascinating. It'd be interesting to look at this in another 10 years and see how these have gone, or what's replaced some of them.
Yeah, how many of them will still be on there?
Well, like Be Real was a huge thing that both of my daughters were very much into for a period of time, but it's very peaky, isn't it? I mean, massive growth, massive loss, and then it's just declining, isn't it? So it's just the hardcore that we're left on something like that, and it looks even like a narrower peak than a MySpace.
Yeah, it's very one and done kind of thing is what Be Real looks like.
It is. Let's move on. Sticking with follow-up, and a new member of the Trump cabinet has been approved by Congress. It's Tulsi Gabbard, in this case, who's going to be the in charge of all the information security and security agencies and all the rest of it. And they're likely to oppose the UK's order for an Apple backdoor. We talked about this a little bit last week. Neither of us was very in favour of it. I have since heard a couple of sort of slightly conflicting takes on it. The BBC's take was slightly different to what the Washington Post put on there. The BBC's take was this was just not a worldwide grab for everybody's data, but nothing new really, where you could have access to those things in one-time cases for UK citizens primarily would be, and it had been sensationalized slightly by the Washington Post, but you could certainly read the law the way that the Washington Post has done this.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. Hopefully it will get opposed. It's not right, is it? Backdoors are never good, but very interesting how it's all going to play out, I think. And do you reckon Tim Apples had picked up the phone? I've put £1 million into you. Can you help me fight this?
Yeah, well, I think that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? If Apple have to give it up in the UK, that every country is going to want this. In fact, let's face it, if it was America asking for this, and they probably have, would we even know about it? Somebody's leaked this story out that it was going to happen, and I mean, it's tricksy stuff. The fact that there is backdoors in security software means that you have bad actors such as Chinese state-sponsored hacking or North Korean or whatever getting into your systems, and you're leaving it wide open. There's no point in us rehashing our arguments about backdoors being bad. You just wonder where we'll end up. We know all governments fundamentally want this. It's not just the UK. We've got a particularly bad piece of law here, but we're not alone in that.
That is very much true.
We're not alone in that. Do you want to tell us about Apple Maps and cycling directions?
Yeah, this looks cool. I did fire up Apple Maps after I saw this, and yeah, the cycling button's now there. So here in the UK and Ireland, we now get cycling directions in Apple Maps natively. So when you go and pick your method, you open up the app. It usually defaults to driving. You can pick that, but now you have a little bike button that you can now pick to get cycling directions, which is pretty cool. I think that looks awesome.
It's taken a long time. Did we not? We were not talking about this like 18 months ago, 2 years ago?
Well, they first launched it in 2020, obviously in the US. So it's taken a long time to get here. And normally we get things relatively quickly. So I'm surprised how long it's taken. But look, it's here. I'll take it as a win. I should get on my bike a little bit more. The only thing I need for my bike, I think, is you need a clamp to stick your phone on. That's what I'd like. So you can see the directions.
Well, my bike has this, so, I cycle to work most days. I definitely don't need maps to get there. It's a 3-park cycle for me to get down there with just a little bit of main roads on there. My bike not only has a clamp, although I need to buy the right case for it, it will charge the phone while it's on the bike.
Now that's fancy. That's very fancy.
It's a fancy bike, what can I say?
Yeah, very cool.
Thank you. Another thing that's very cool are the proliferation of 5K monitors. So this time, Mac Rumors have got hold of the new Asus ProArt 5K, and they give it a bit of a review. It's, from the sound of it, all of these have the same panel that are in the Apple Studio display. same brightness, all the rest of it. The difference is the case that they come in and the cost that they are. And in this case, it comes with a $799, presumably pound price tag, and that's quite interesting to me, I got to say.
Yeah, somebody who's after another 5K display to put in the house. I'm curious to see this. I wonder if that Apple panel is now filtered down to the other manufacturers. Maybe Apple had a lock on it for a while. I don't know how that works. Maybe it does feel like we are going to be getting a new Studio display this year, though, because it feels like everybody else has caught up. So is Apple going to go do something else? But this is a great screen for what is still £800, give or take. But it's relatively, I'm not going to say cheap, but it's relatively well priced compared to the Apple equivalent. So it's good to see it hotting up a bit more. And yeah, you're right. Most of them have the same panel, but it's the ports and the extras you get. The one thing I wish the Studio display had was 2 inputs, because then in the house I could have my gaming PC on it and I can use it for my Mac. So I think it's a great looking bit of kit. I'm curious to see. I do want to buy a screen, but I'm waiting. I want to just see how this year rounds out, what Apple's new Studio display might look like, and who else releases things. But it's great.
It is, and while I'm with you on these things should have multiple ports, so the 4K monitor I'm using at the moment has 3 input ports to choose from. I can do USB-C, I can do HDMI, or I can do DisplayPort, and the previous screen I had did exactly the same thing. It's also got a Thunderbolt USB-C equivalent out, so you can chain from screen to screen without having to go back to your computer for multiple inputs, which I also think is very cool.
That's cool.
And as a consequence has a KVM in it as well, so you switch inputs. If you have a wired keyboard and mouse plugged into it and you switch inputs, then the keyboard and mouse follows you too, and that's really what you want. You don't want to be messing around with multiple inputs for these kinds of things. And the Studio display does not support that. You get one connection that goes into your Mac and you can charge stuff, and that's pretty much it. So I agree with you, but I disagree with you that you'd want one of these for gaming on, because for 2 very good reasons. One is, most PCs are going to struggle to drive a 5K display at native resolution at any sort of frames per second. You know, you're going to be lucky to get 9 or 10 frames per second at max resolution at 5K on most PCs, even with a good gaming graphics card.
I say gaming, I kind of mean playing some old retro games. I'm not exactly playing anything that current other than Civ or what will be Commanders when it comes out. So I don't know, I'm interested. I have put in the show notes the link to the Bank one as well, which I don't think is out here in the UK yet. But just as a comparator, they've got a really good looking screen coming as well. But you're probably right. I probably need to have 2 screens in the house, one for my Mac and one for my PC.
I think as an experiment, you should take one of your Macs or one of your gaming PCs. I think you've got laptops mostly. Plug it into something like this, even a 4K one, and see how well it does at max resolution of even something like Civ 7. I think it would struggle.
Yeah, I've had it plugged up to the 4K screen in the house. It's okay, but the games I'm playing aren't that current. I haven't tried it with Civ.
And then the second part of that is, even if you did have a graphics card that could drive it, most of these are only 60 frames per second. And most games are, you want a bit 100, 120 frames per second on. So I think if what you want is a screen for gaming on, go and buy a 1080p or 1440p high refresh rate.
That's the thing I'm missing. I haven't got that high refresh rate. Maybe you're right. Maybe I need 2 screens. Done.
And I think they're so cheap. I mean, if you go on Hot UK Deals or one of these websites, you can find gaming screens that'll do 180 frames per second for 120 quid, something like that, and save yourself the other 600 for a better graphics card.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I do need to do that too. Okay, done.
That's me. That's my advice. More Apple news, and this is the bad type. We talked about this last week. We thought Apple were going to resume advertising on X, the website formerly known as Twitter, and they have, and I think it's disgusting.
Concur. I don't want to talk anymore about this. After last week's Grown-Up episode or the week before.
Well, it does, and just a very slight whinge to remind the odd new listener we might have had is that Apple stopped advertising on X because its adverts were appearing below Nazi/fascist not warning signs, but tweets by people. So a bunch of advertisers pulled out of X. Apple was one of them. Elon tried to sue a bunch of them, I seem to recall, and then he told them they could F off. And now he's the very important person that he is, the president in all but name. X has become the default messaging for the United States government. So I can understand on one level why they're going back, but on another, no.
Yeah, I completely agree. This is always a problem with advertising, is that you can't always control what your advert will appear next to. And it's disappointing they've gone back so quickly, straight after the inauguration. Doesn't sit right.
No, I'm not going back, that's for sure.
Agreed.
I got to say, both Mastodon and Blue Sky are far more refreshing places to get your social media from than Twitter has been in a very long time. And Mastodon particularly, because there is no algorithm bubbling up people that I'm maybe vaguely interested in or not. I just get a timeline of people I want to follow in the order I want to read them in, and that is all I want from a social media network.
Yeah, no, agreed. And Mastodon's great for the tech area, though, isn't it? Because that's what most tech people are on Mastodon.
Yep, definitely. One thing that's not so great in tech is AI summaries, as we've discovered many times, and the BBC have gone even further with this. They obviously had quite a lot of fallout from very inaccurate reporting from Apple Intelligence, and they've gone off to do an actual study on it. And unsurprisingly, AI summaries turn real news into absolute nonsense.
I think they turn most things into nonsense. I just don't think AI summaries is a tech that people have spent enough time on it. I concur with this. It turns news in. I had the same problem with my email still. I've got a long thread going with somebody, and it's still looking at the original bit of the thread rather than you want the summary to be the latest reply, really, don't you? You don't want the summary to be the entire thing. So that's really disappointing.
Yeah, I worry slightly about I hope we haven't got too much of an anti-LLM/AI bias, really, because we tend to report on the bad stuff rather than the good stuff. And it's not to say there's no beneficial things about the models at all. It's just stuff like this is slob.
But this is stuff that conceptually should be quite easy. It's released to everybody that's got a reasonably good iPhone, or recent iPhone, should I say. And you would have thought this would be one of the easiest problem sets to fix within an LLM. You know, it's very constrained, and that's possibly the problem. They're trying to summarize something that's quite simple, already been summarized. I just think it's really disappointing because this should have been an easy win, and seems to have backfired because Apple have tried to release all the AI stuff far too early, in my opinion.
I'm immediately going to try and balance this. So I saw a lecture from this chap called Phil Newton this week. This is very local to me, but it might be of interest. Asking, can ChatGPT pass a medical exam? And his research is based on not only the entrance medical exams, but the sort of intermediate ones, and then your finals, and then your specialization into surgery, medicine, neurology, cardiology, whatever it is you choose to go on and do. He did it because there's lots of published information about that. The exams are quite well known. The questions are in a standardized format and all the rest of it. And the long and the short of it is, it could only just do it back in the ChatGPT 3.5 days. But these days it gets like an 85 to 90% pass rate on almost all medical exams.
Wow, that's quite impressive.
So it's not to say that the models are bad. The models are good and getting better at specialized knowledge like this. And his takeaway in all of this is that, yeah, you can do it, but should you? You know, we're not really getting into the morals of this, is that it's amazing what the technology can do for you, but it doesn't replace the underlying knowledge that a physician needs to have in order to be an effective physician. You can answer the exam, but the point of being an expert in anything is, what do you do when the parameters change? And that's an interesting way to come at this. So this is me trying to sort of right our bias a little bit. There are benefits to these things. There's massive downsides to all this, of course there is, but I just thought that was fascinating.
I don't disagree. I think there are benefits, but I just think companies are rushing to get this stuff out too quickly before they've properly tested it. And this is an interesting one, obviously, that you brought up, and it will get better. But I just don't understand why they've rushed to get something out that isn't that good. That's got to be frustrating, hasn't it?
I think for Apple particularly, because they were late to market, they should have got this right. They should have got this better than the pre-existing companies, and they really haven't. And like I say, I've turned it off for 2 weeks now, and I'm genuinely not missing any feature of Apple Intelligence.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? I think they've rushed to get it out, and normally Apple, when they're late, and they just dig in a bit longer, and people go, I can't believe they've taken 2 years to do this. But in this scenario, I think they should have taken another year, 100%. I'm even not sure if they need longer than that, to be fair.
Well, I don't think we'll see many of the features they talked about in iOS 18, even in iOS 19 at this point. We're certainly not going to see improved Siri before WWDC.
I wouldn't have thought so, no. And we may find out more this week, as Apple have got an event coming up.
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week, I think. If all that is going to turn out to be as a new iPhone SE, that's going to be a very bit of a damp squib.
Agreed.
Tell us about Apple's new purchases.
So Apple have officially purchased Pixelmator, the company which gives them the Pixelmator app and the Photomator app. I love these apps. I was trying to make a graphic just last week, and I was using Acorn, which I did buy to support Gus Mealer, the independent app developer. I thought I'd just try it out, but it just didn't work the way I wanted it to work. Some of the keys, the tools, etc. Fired up Pixelmator, and I was just off to the races again. This was on my Mac. What a great app! So you've got apps here for making graphics with pixels, ultimately, and then obviously photo editing with Photomator. They're really good apps. Apple bought them. They announced it back in November, and then what they've done is released an update to all the apps, and there's just a simple splash screen that just says this app's now owned by Apple, and I think they've done it in a really nice way, and it's all gone through. I really hope that they maintain the apps in the right way, because I think these have always been very good native feeling apps. I think the Pixelmator team always have done a good job, really well respected. I just hope the acquisition goes well. A bit like Workflow, that then became Shortcuts, was an acquisition by Apple, and they kept it going, kept the spirit alive. I hope they do that with these.
Yeah, was that you creating some nice car corner show notes for us last week? Art for us.
It wasn't, but I need to go do all that. So maybe that's a job for today, as I have a quiet day at home.
I think that would be great, and some animated stuff for our transitions would be great too if you're at it. For those of you that did have to suffer the album art for Car Corner last week, I apologise. That was something I knocked together in literally 30 seconds, I think, but it did the job for then.
Yeah, no, agreed. I will try and do something more in keeping with our brand.
Shall we move on and do some news?
Let's go do the news.
Right, first off, hope you've patched your phones, everybody, because there was quite a sophisticated attack out there, which was aggressively attacking all Apple devices, not just phones. So you should have updated your Macs, your iPads, your phones, your AirPods, absolutely everything. It patches a flaw in USB restricted mode, which was introduced in 2018, which disables the Lightning or USB ports on phones and pads if they're locked for more than an hour. So this went into 18.3.1, I think. So go out there and get your patches. But it's good that, it's not good that there's ever a security vulnerability, but it's good that it was patched as quickly as it was. So don't hang about with this one.
Yeah, it's great to see they've actually reacted to it quickly, because sometimes Apple aren't famed for doing it always that quickly. So no, fantastic. So yeah, everybody should go patch all the things. It's a very boring update, but you should definitely patch.
Yeah, definitely. It is interesting. You look at these kinds of things in light of potential government backdoors, and you think, are any of these things ever deliberately left into the operating system from time to time? But
I'd like to think not, but you never know, do you?
You never know. Another thing you never know is the longevity of open source projects. This is quite an interesting sort of aside, really. So we talked on this podcast, right near the start of the podcast, about Asahi Linux, which was an initiative to get the Linux kernel running on Apple Silicon Macs. They've had some success with this. It will run on M1 and M2 Macs, on laptops and desktops. Not everything is 100% yet, but the fact that Apple don't publish any of the hardware specs for any of the devices, it's frankly amazing that they got anything up and running. And I think if you're an M1 or M2 laptop user, the only things that don't really work at this point are the webcam and plugging into external displays. Everything else does, and that's pretty good going for having a reverse engineer everything. Apparently, Hector, who's the person we're going to talk about in a minute, spent an awful long time in getting the speakers to sound right and the sound out without blowing anything, which is something you don't think about when you just
quite
install
a skill, isn't it?
Well, you're installing software. What's it going to do? And he reckons his tuning to them actually sounded better than what Apple did. So obviously a very talented engineer. Actually submitted patches to the Linux kernel, which is quite a fraught experience because the leader of the Linux kernel, Linus Torvalds, is still very much the man in charge of that and is known for having a bit of a temper when it comes to what he will tolerate into and out of the Linux kernel. It seems that bit of a temper has got to Hector Marcan, who is the person we're talking about here, and he's resigned as a kernel maintainer or a kernel patcher and actually stepped back from the Asahi Linux project as well, because that contentious relationship with Linus and others was becoming too problematic for him to maintain. I think this is always sad when it's personality and not engineering that gets in the way of talented coders like this.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's a shame, isn't it? And the skills this person has are quite immense, aren't they? If they are, like you say, engineering the sound that's coming out so he doesn't blow speakers. And reverse engineering's hard, but also quite satisfying when you achieve it. So he's obviously done a huge amount and obviously spent many years on it. So it's a real shame stepping away.
It is, and sort of the fundamentals underlying this. If you go back, he started hacking on this stuff in the Wii back in the day.
Wow.
So he was doing that. He was hacking Linux onto PlayStations. He's had an amazing career with doing this kind of stuff. And I'm sure somebody who with these skills won't entirely walk away from tinkering with it, but it's a shame when you lose it in a position of responsibility or authority, where you can actually make these fundamental changes. And it seems to come down to having rust in the Linux kernel. And this is, it almost becomes a religious issue with kernel maintainers about. I think Linus is very keen on the fact that only C should be in the Linux kernel as a very low-level language that everybody understands that's robust, whereas more modern developers or newer developers believe in Rust a lot more because it's safer. You'll run into less memory execution errors, and it's safer by design than C. It's a more modern language. It's not a surprise, but at the same time, it's not like Linux has suffered as a consequence of having lots of C in the kernel, compared to potentially other operating systems. So it's very interesting. It's a very long article. And apparently the Asahi Linux program will continue. They're still trying to get M3 and M4 up and running. But good effort, Hector. Well done for getting the project this far, and it's a sad way to go.
Yeah, I think that's it. It's a sad end, isn't it, that he's stepping away.
Also, the most detailed Mastodon post you'd ever come across if you followed him on Mastodon.
Oh, okay. No, I had not, but now maybe I'll take a look.
Do you want to talk about a man with a rubbish dump in the city of Newport in South Wales?
This is the one that I've seen online where a man wants to buy a rubbish dump, or a tip as we might call it here in the UK, because at some point he's lost some bitcoins in this rubbish dump where he's recycled hard drives, or hard drives have gone in there, and he wants to recover them. It's quite a thing, isn't it? I mean, it's quite serious if you're going to make a bid to buy a tip so that you can then spend the next X number of years potentially hoping to find them. And even if you find them, you're going to be able to recover them. I mean, wow, it's quite a thing. This feels like this could be a film in 20 years' time of a man going slowly insane over many, many days, months, years. What do you think?
Well, it's been many years at this point. This story keeps popping up. He keeps thinking So what happened was he had a hard drive with 8,000 bitcoins on it that he mistakenly put into the rubbish. So the rubbish went to landfill. It's, in Newport, which is a small city just on the border with England and Wales for anybody whose geography isn't particularly great about this part of the world. But quite populous. There's a lot of people there. There's sort of environs. They've got a very large landfill. It's went in there. He's realised he's lost his hard drive with 8,000 bitcoins in. I don't even know how much that is worth. Possibly up to $800 million, apparently.
Yeah.
So you can understand why he might be interested in finding it. But this story has been years. Every so often he's gone and he's looked. I think they've let him wander around with a metal detector. And from the sound of things, Newport City Council are very much of the opinion of, once you put it in landfill, it's not yours anymore. Once you put it in the bin, and that is true. If you've ever been to your local rubbish dump in the UK and you go, I quite like the look of that somebody else has put there, they'll say, it's in the rubbish. It's ours now. It's not yours.
Yeah, you're literally giving it away. It's the same when you go to a charity shop and you give them a book or a DVD, you're giving it to somebody else. So I kind of get it, but equally, this is a huge amount of potential money that this person has lost. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. What do you think? Do you think he should buy it?
The thing is, if you read the sort of Guardian article, Newport City Council actually want to redevelop the site. They want to, do something with the rubbish. They want to turn it into a park. They want to make it useful. And he obviously doesn't want any of that. But what are your chances of combing through, 30 years worth of rubbish and finding your hard drive in amongst that 30 years worth of rubbish? Can you even imagine doing that?
It's not a job I would want to do. This is clearly eating him up inside, though. He needs some form of closure on this, though, so that if he's going to walk away, that it's closed and he's okay. And do you know what I mean? Whereas it feels maybe if he buys it, he's just going to eat himself up more and more and more for, the rest of his life potentially.
Yeah, I mean, how this is going to affect people in Newport. And it's interesting if you read the things in The Guardian that he's written about how he'll give parks to the people of Newport and he'll do this, that, and the other thing if he's able to find it. I can understand why he's a bit miffed about this. If you read through the article, his ex-partner accidentally threw away the hard drive in 2013. It's 15 years later, mate. I'm afraid. I know it's 800 million, if you can remember the key for it at this point, but it's not coming back to you.
Yeah, what state's that hard drive going to be in?
You could potentially pay quite a lot of money to a data recovery firm if you ever actually managed to find it. But again, Seagate 6 terabyte hard drive wouldn't have been in 2013, would it? Seagate 1 terabyte hard drive or something like that. How many of them are lying around in that rubbish dump?
Oh, I don't know. What would you find on some of them? Ugh.
In underneath 7 tons of nappies and seagull poo and God knows what else. It's an amazing story that just keeps popping back up.
Yeah, agreed. But I think that poor person needs closure so he can move on.
It does. So your favourite app has had a bit of an update. Do you want to tell us about Microsoft Outlook?
So I read this after you put it in this show notes. I was like, how have I not heard about this? I use Outlook on the mobile all the time. I use it on my iPad. I use it on my phone. I haven't got this. I've not got this update. So what the update is a little minus button when you're composing an email. So you can click new email as you do now. And in the top left, you've got the close button. But on the top right, they're going to add a little minus button to minimize it and push it down to the bottom so you can then come back to that. This is a great feature. They should have done this before, but I haven't got it. So I'm assuming it's one of these things that Microsoft have they've announced it and I guess it's going to roll out at some point. But this is great. Like this is what mobile apps need, is that bit of multitasking within the app. Because often I might have the app open, and on the iPad you can open multiple windows of Outlook. But sometimes I open it and I just refer back to my phone because I'm in the middle of writing a new email to check a date, for example, for a meeting. So it's great they're doing it, but I haven't seen it yet. But I'm looking forward to it. And I don't run any of the betas of the Microsoft stuff. I just run the production stuff. I used to run the betas a while ago, but they update so frequently that I don't really want that. I just want the prime time released versions.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I agree with you. This is the kind of thing that should have been there from the start. If you've got an app that takes over your entire screen and you need to say, check your calendar, it's really quite handy to be able to do that and not just be stuck looking at that thing and then have to go off hunting for your drafts or wherever it's been. So yeah, well done, Microsoft. I think Apple have something similar like than this already. I don't use Apple Mail, really, so I can't really comment. For me, because of things like this, that's why I could never use mobile versions of Outlook very intensively. There's one email I want to do or something very quick I've got to do, but if I was doing a serious email session, my phone is not where I go for that. I've got to sit in front of a computer or a web browser.
Yeah, Apple do have something exactly the same as this.
There you go. So Apple, as we talked about a minute ago, I've got a potential special event this week. If I can pull up the webpage, here we are.
Yeah, so on February the 19th, Apple, Tim Cook on X, have announced, I'm going to change my wording for X. Sorry, Tim Cook on Twitter, the platform sometimes known as X, has announced that they've got a new product coming to join the family on Wednesday. So I'm curious to see what this is. Is this just the iPhone SE? Have they got something more exciting? Yeah, there's been talk, obviously, of home stuff coming. MacBook Air's coming with the M4. So I think it's quite interesting. I always like an Apple event, even if it's not for me. It's always nice just to see some new stuff because it may impact somebody around me. So it should be good.
Yeah. I never recommend anybody buys an iPhone SE because they've been sold for such a long period of time. This, I hate to say it, but cynical Rod is back. I think the only reason this product even exists is because they need to put a USB-C port on it to sell it in Europe.
No, I'm going to be slightly more positive, Chris. I think that they're going to do one with the notch of some shape or form. It's going to have a better chip in it. It's going to also have USB-C, so they need to do that. It needs to do Apple Intelligence. But also they're going to move it away from the home button, aren't they? The fact they still sell a home button device in this day and age is bonkers. So I think this is positive. It's rumoured it might have Apple's 5G modem. This seems like a good device to test that in. So I'm a little bit more optimistic. I would love them to do a relatively new phone that is the one you say to your parents to go and buy. Like, I know you don't want to spend a load of money on an iPhone, but you need a newer one. Here's one that you can buy brand new for about £400 here in the UK. That would be ideal. This won't be that, I know, but I would like them to do a new phone that is the one, and I'd like to see them update it every 2 years and commit to it.
No Apple Intelligence with there's 8 gigs of RAM in it.
It says Apple Intelligence just below that, though, so I don't know. It'd be interesting to see what that means.
Yeah, but is that the thing that will happen in the cloud? What is it, secure, whatever it is?
And it passes off. Yeah, I don't know. But
yeah,
I'm excited. We're having an event. Hopefully they're going to release more than just the phone. Like I said, there's lots for them to release. So that'll be good.
I think there's lots of people waiting for a potential M4 MacBook Air.
Yeah, that one. I'd like to see them bring out the new Studio. Ideally, a Studio Display. I'm not obviously going to buy any of these devices. There's talk of an iPad Air getting an update. So we'll have to wait and see. But no, I think this is exciting. It's good. It's nice to have something to look forward to.
Yeah, something not to look forward to is Larry Ellison wants to put all American data, including DNA, into one big Oracle database. Wouldn't that be fantastic?
Yeah, why wouldn't we do that?
So Larry Ellison is the fourth richest man in the world. He owns Oracle. He's a certified sailing nut. He has many boats with Oracle in it. Oracle has a patchy record for acquiring and doing things with other companies and all the rest of it. They're not always the best stewards of that. And I think Ellison himself has had some questionable viewpoints over time. He's a big friend of Elon Musk, so I'll just leave that out there and let people make their own decisions. On one level, you can understand the medical model I've just posted that we talked about earlier. Bringing this kind of knowledge together can be good, but imagine the vulnerabilities in having absolutely all your data, including your DNA, your banking information, your IRS, everything that's going on about you in one database. What could go wrong?
Oh, what could go wrong? How many backdoors would there be? They're going to use it to train AI models and all of that malarkey. So, yeah, it just doesn't sound good, does it?
So, and I found the quote I was looking for. Ellison would like constant real-time surveillance of populations analysed by Oracle-powered machine learning products to keep everyone on their best behaviour.
What? I just don't understand. Why doesn't he just retire? He can't need any more money. Why is he doing this to us?
I'm sure this was the plot of Captain America: The Winter Soldier. You know, we're just going to target all the people we don't like and shoot them because we can. We've got the technology.
Oh, it's bonkers, isn't it? I just don't like it. Yeah, this is just fraught with problems, isn't it? Tech billionaires, too much money, wanting to take over the world. This would be a theme for a Hollywood movie.
It would be. You could maybe watch that Hollywood movie on your Apple TV now on your Android phone, which is something you haven't been able to do up till now. The Apple TV app is finally available on Android. Woohoo!
Am I the only one that was like, is this not already a thing? I thought this would have been a solved problem many, many years ago when they really started opening up Apple TV Plus on more platforms. I can't believe they haven't done this before.
Yeah, I think this is very poor. I mean, Android phones outnumber Apple phones. We know this is the fact. You can watch Apple TV on your PlayStation. You can watch Apple TV on your Roku box. You know, it's everywhere. Why on earth has it not been available on Android?
I don't understand. It's been I think Apple's attempts on their own ecosystem have been poor with some of their apps, but the fact that they're not supporting Android is just stupid to me for their services. Come on now. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So that's good. If you're an Android fan, there's lots of good shows on there. Get a month subscription and check it out because things like Severance for All Mankind and others are really, really good.
I completely agree. This is definitely worth a month of your time. Like I dip in and out of Netflix, people should dip in and out of Apple TV Plus.
And this is in news, not follow-up, because it's about a technology, not about the media itself. So we'll save the media itself for... I know Chris had an issue with me before we started the show about the location of this story, so I'm just making that point.
I just get confused where to put stuff.
Well, it's arbitrary, and it's whoever gets to the show notes first, Chris.
Well, that's you. You're the boss.
Hardly. One thing I'm definitely not the boss of, and neither is NVIDIA, are the fact that their power connectors are melting. So if you're into computer gaming or machine learning at all, you want an NVIDIA graphics card. That's the be-all and end-all of this. Although DeepSeek has kind of put a little bit of paid to that, you're able to do it on other platforms. NVIDIA 3 weeks ago released their 5000 series cards. So the 5090, the new hotness, you're able to get many, many frames per second in an appropriate PC in 4K or even 5K. You might want one of these to try out your 5K screen with, Chris. But they run really hot. So the 5090, apparently the power connectors to connect them to the motherboard run so hot they're melting on the card.
That's not good, is it? That is not a good look. I mean, these cards are expensive. I know it's the latest and greatest tech, but the fact these... Look, I mean, if you look at the picture, though, that you're showing now, you've got these braided industrial-looking cables with what look like quite cheap plasticky connectors at the end. So it's quite interesting that everything looks quite industrial and their connectors don't. But it's not good if they're getting that hot, is it? That's not good.
I mean, NVIDIA don't generally give you the cables with it. The cables are what come out of your PSU, your power supply unit.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't blame them for that, but these connectors are standardized, aren't they? You know, it's a plastic connector that comes out your PSU that you've plugged into your presumably last generation graphics card, your NVIDIA 3000 series or 4000 series or your ATX, whatever, and they've worked fine for years, and then you plug them in this graphics card. What's changed? The hot graphics card on the other end of it.
Wow. Oh, those cards must be so hot. I mean, this is not good if these 5 Series Ranger cards are going to start appearing in data centers. Could you just think about this for a minute, like how bad this is for the environment and how hot they're going to be running?
So I talked earlier about buying a new 65 watt GAN charger from Argos. It draws 65 watts to charge my phone overnight. This draws the previous series, the 4090, drew 450 watts while the card was running. The RTX 5090 draws 575 watts over a cable rated to 600 watts.
Wow, that's insane.
And just in case anybody hasn't been paying attention to all our large language models, you want graphics card to make them run really, really quickly. If you query ChatGPT, there's a farm of these things. A query saying, tell me a story with 20 words costs the same amount of water as one bottle, about 300 mils of water. Can you imagine the power, electricity, and water usage of a farm of these kinds of cards running in data centers around the world? It's no wonder they're also expensive.
Yeah, it's awful, isn't it, frankly? Like, they're just, the sheer amount of power we're all going to be using in the short term, well, it's not good. It's really not good at all. Anyway,
as usual, the graphics market moves forward. These don't seem to be being received particularly well, it must be safe. You want the new hotness. If you can get hold of one of these cards, it's going to go up on flames, it would seem. I guess it's going to keep your feet and your cat really warm, though.
Jeez. I mean, it does feel with DeepSeek and now this, NVIDIA's not all done to themselves, but have had a few missteps here.
They've had a bit of a shocker, but this is often the way.
We better crack on with the media.
Let's talk about media. Well, we haven't got much of a main show, so I think we're going long in the news on purpose. Did you watch any films this week?
I did watch, I can't remember if I spoke about it last week, but I finished the Amy Winehouse biopic, which I can't remember when it came out. I'm being a really bad podcasty person now. Amy Winehouse. But obviously it's very sad because she did pass away. But the film, it's not documentary, it's dramatization. That's probably it, Back to Black. It was fantastic. 2024 it came out.
2024, yeah, that was last year. I remember seeing advertised on the side of a bus. Lovely voice. Met her mother. That's one of my celebrity claims to fame. Very sad. This kind of thing is always very tragic. Amazing makeup. Had no desire to watch the film though. Does that make me a bad person?
No, not at all. I don't know why I wanted to watch the film, to be honest. I just saw it and thought, I wouldn't mind to see it. So I watched this film, and it got 35% on Rotten Tomatoes by the pro reviewers and 86% by the popcorn people, which to me, I think the reviewers have been especially harsh on it. I thought it was really good. Because it's always hard when you're doing a biopic, isn't it? Because you've got to pick. You can't do the whole life, so you've got to pick key moments. And it kind of started off with her starting out in life, getting a record contract, then obviously going big, and her relationship with her partner and how toxic that was. And then I didn't realise they split up. She actually got herself clean, but she died from alcohol poisoning. Because she'd been off alcohol for so long, and that's what it was. But it was just really well done. I thought very tasteful at the end, and her voice was amazing. And the actress playing Amy she was 100% believable as Amy, in my opinion. So I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I like a music biopic, I think is the phrase you were looking for, maybe. I particularly enjoyed Walk the Line with Joaquin Phoenix and Reese Witherspoon, I think.
Correct.
Terrific film, really well put together, and I really like it when they sing the songs. I think Timothée Chalamet does the same thing in the upcoming Bob Dylan film, as opposed to them just playing the original artist over the top of them.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing that. But I would recommend Back to Black. I don't agree with that, but like you, I quite like a biopic, if I'm being honest. And I know there's some dramatization in there, so I know it's not 100%.
It is interesting. I mean, there's quite a gulf between the critics and the fans on this one, isn't there?
Yeah, it's bizarre, that split, if I'm being honest.
I mean, that first comment, this papering over Winehouse and her story isn't just bland and boring, it's offensive. I mean, have they missed something major out of the
maybe I don't know her well enough to comment on that. I saw the headlines on the BBC of when she was famous, but I don't know the background well enough. As a film, I thought it was a very well done film.
Interesting. Okay. I also managed to watch, one film this week. I watched Blazing Saddles, which is a film from 1974. The film is the same age as me, um, which is frankly horrifying. It's a Mel Brooks film. I quite like a Mel Brooks film. Young Frankenstein is one of the greatest films ever made. No, I will take no questions about this. It's quite hard. It's quite a hard watch in some sense that the language of what was acceptable when this film would have been released in 1974 compared to what it is now is challenging to a modern ear. I'm sure many people in America would have no problem with it right now, but I struggled. I got to say, well done. The fact that it was one of the first black leading men in a film like this, everybody was quite an achievement at the time. Gene Wilder is fantastic. The actors do a terrific job. Clevedon Little as Bart, Sheriff Bart particularly. Some good songs. It kind of loses its way a little bit in the third act, but it's ridiculous fun, really skewering racism and the way a lot of things were looked at in America, particularly in the 1970s, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it.
I've heard about it. I've never seen it. And your face says it all. But I think equally like you, I'd possibly struggle with some of it because when you do go back and watch things from the 70s and 80s, it can be a little bit of a challenge in the current era.
I think it's deliberate in this case, though, to sort of highlight how racial issues were seen and acted upon by many people. Up to this day, let's face it, is probably as relevant now as ever was.
I completely agree with you.
Anyway, that's all I've got to say about that. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'll just like to say both the critics and the audience back me up on my my review.
No, I did notice that they are a lot more in sync than the film I've just put forward.
Yeah. Looks like Formula One's on its way back.
Yeah, so I just popped in the chat, in the show notes. There's an updated trailer for the F1 film that Brad Pitt is in. It's being produced by Apple. I was a bit unsure when I first saw the trailer for this that came out last year, but actually this one has got me a little bit interested. I'm a big Formula One person. I've seen them film some of this when I've been to a race a couple of years ago, so I'm super curious. But man, it's been a long time in the making. This is, the last 2 years they've been filming this, so curious to see what the final product's going to be. And somewhere in this background of the clips Rod was just showing, I would have been there, but obviously like a speck on the screen.
Well, it's nice to know you've been in it, and I've got a nice freeze frame of Brad Pitt there.
That's perfectly done. Well done. He seems to be like actual Benjamin Button at this point because he doesn't seem to be aging as much as the rest of us.
Yeah, I was thinking that when I was watching Bullet Train last week, that Brad Pitt, he's holding up pretty well.
Yeah, he can put off a younger character pretty well, to be fair to him.
New release on Apple TV this week is The Gorge with Anya Taylor-Joy and Miles Teller, I think. I want to say Miles Teller. I'll scroll down. Yeah, Miles Teller. I watched the trailer for this. I thought it looked laughably bad.
Well, it looks like I've not seen it, by the way, but it looks like the reviewers are in a similar boat to you. They gave it way more than the Amy Winehouse film that I've just mentioned, but yeah, 61% from the reviewers. So, are you going to watch it?
It should be right up my street. Vaguely horror-based science fiction-y film with two lovers separated by a trench full of killer beasties. I mean, what's not to like about something like that?
Yeah, I won't be watching this.
I didn't think it would be up your street. It's interesting that Greyhound scored better, and I quite enjoyed Greyhound, although the special effects were dreadful. Yeah, I don't know. If I've got nothing better to watch one night, I might give it a chance.
Actually, you mentioned Greyhound's interesting. I've still never seen it. I should probably pop that on. That might be a good film for me just to catch up on.
Yeah, I think you'd quite enjoy Greyhound. I mean, it's a bit of a liberty on the sense that I think the original book, which was a Douglas Freeman novel, is about a British destroyer, and they turn it into an American one for some reason, because I guess they've got to get Tom Hanks to star in it. But yeah, I mean, it's not bad.
Yeah, I like a Tom Hanks film, so I may give that a go.
Shall we talk about a couple of games?
We just need to very quickly cover Netflix for a moment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Linked with the Apple TV app on the Apple TV platform. And for a moment, some people could see Netflix content appearing in the TV app, in the stream, where you can see everything you're currently watching and new things pop in there. And part of me thought, this is great. I've been wanting this for ages. And then they took it away again. So for a brief moment, it looked like Netflix was going to do what everybody else like Prime is doing and what have you. And I'm a little disappointed that this has come and gone. Because I've been wanting this. I don't use Netflix a huge amount, but when I do, I'd love it to pop up because I sometimes forget I've got Netflix and I'm watching something in it. And this is probably aimed at more somebody like me who occasionally watches something in Netflix. Whereas obviously Netflix is banking on you being with them every month and just going to Netflix for everything. So I'm a little disappointed it came and went so quickly, but there you go.
It seems like it'll be back.
I don't know. Netflix have said no. This was not a thing they were planning to do. So who knows?
We shall see, I guess. All right. Okay. Well, now we'll move on and do games then instead.
Yep, let's do games. We've both played a game.
You and I have both played a game this week. So Civilization, as we talked about in last week's podcast, has dropped. Civilization 7 has dropped. It features the voice of Bridget Christie, I want to say. I might have said that wrong. That might be somebody who's in Taskmaster as opposed to the lady that played Brienne of Tarth in Game of Thrones and was in one of the recent episodes of Severance, actually, and Captain Phasma in the newer Star Wars films, if you watch them.
She's very good. You're just saying words I don't understand.
You must have seen the latest Star Wars films.
Oh, maybe.
7, 8, and 9.
Yeah. Okay.
You know the silver stormtrooper captain?
Yes, sorry. Yep, I got you.
Captain Phasma. That is a word you understand. Anyway,
okay.
She does the voiceover, replacing Sean Bean and Leonard Nimoy.
So we've both played Civ 7. I think we're going to have different opinions on it because Rod's obviously has played the previous ones, and I really played Civ 2 a lot, a bit of Civ 3, and then ducked out for many, many years. So I think it's going to be interesting to see both of our takes on this. And I've only played it a short amount of time, a couple of hours put into it last week.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, that's quite a tone in your voice there.
Yeah, I got to say I struggled with it. It feels to have taken out a lot of the mechanics that I would expect to see in a Civ game. Simple things like auto-explore. I don't even need to go that far, actually. I don't like the fact auto-explore's gone. I don't like the fact that there's no builders in it anymore. That you used to be able to construct around your city whether you wanted irrigation or a mine or roads built or whatever that. And they have changed that over the years, but that doesn't appear to be a mechanic anymore. You're going to get a list of whinges if I'm not careful. So I think my initial impressions were okay. It looks very like Civ 6 with a bit more of a polish on it, so not dramatically different from what I was expecting. The graphics are quite cluttered, though. Like, trying to work out if you've got a fortification or a unit guarding your main city or any of your cities in amongst everything else is really quite confusing. Did you found it very easy to move around, did you?
I guess so. I haven't got any baggage. It's like I say, the last version of Civ I played, it was 15 years ago or something. I quite enjoyed it. I got a bit egotistical. I wiped out Civilization, and then I thought I'd take over the world and failed epically. But I quite enjoyed it. I was a bit nervous about playing it because I thought, how much am I going to have to learn just to get the basics, if you understand what I mean, just to get up and running. But I actually quite enjoyed it. Got going reasonably quickly. There's a few things that I remembered from my time of playing it, but there's a lot more reading up I need to do and be a bit clever about what I pick. But I wanted to build more things at once, and that's probably what I need to start understanding. But no, on the whole, quite enjoyed it. But I've not, I guess, played all those middle games, so coming at it from a very different point of view from you.
Yeah, you've got a lot of change then to deal with because there's mechanics have been brought in, like religion, diplomacy changes. There's lots of things that have come in the meantime. I don't think this handles them very well. I think Civ 6 did a better job. And don't get me wrong, Civ 6 was a disaster at launch as well. It took several patches and updates to get to a point where it was a playable game. But there's some unforgivable things in this, like working out how long something is going to take to build is odd. The fact that when you establish a new city, you just get a unit is odd. I quite like the improvement to armies and things like that in one sense. So in the way beyond of Civ games, you could get like the stack of death, which would be you'd put all your units into one tile. So where you're going off to attack a city, you had no idea what was about to smash you, and what you thought was a bowman or an archer or something actually contained 50 catapults and 3 hoplites,
okay.
And that stack of death kind of thing. And that's slightly back in Civ 5 and 6. You had all your units could only take up one tile, so you couldn't have that stack. So you'd see an army coming towards you with lots of things as opposed to just one thing that you thought you could shrug off. Now you've got army commanders which can gather units with them and sort of move as one, but you then need to deploy them to when you get to where you're going, and then they take up one tile again. But if where you're going is a city just right on an outpost with nothing around it except maybe some, I don't know, nautical units, when you deploy your army, they end up in the water as boats.
Yeah, that did confuse me, that I could just have they morph into a boat. I must confess that blew my mind a little bit.
Whereas once upon a time, to even have boats, you needed to have the research of sailing done in order a unit knew to do that. You don't seem to need that in this time. So there's a lot of negative things. Now, I'm being very negative because I hold Civ to quite a high standard. It's always been a good, reliable game with carefully thought out mechanics, nice, clearish graphics that you could see what was going on. And I feel like they've made a lot of changes and not communicated them very well with the player. Who, let's face it, most players who come up to Civ aren't new players or haven't missed it for a few turns. They buy it every 5 years or whenever it comes out. So I just feel like, considering how long it's been in development, and I think it's getting on for 10 years it's been in development, there's a lot of very rushed, very odd mechanical choices made to the game that I find quite immersion breaking.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I was a little concerned because on the day of release there was like, there's a patch coming out and we want the community feedback to tell us where to focus our effort. And I thought more of that would have been done in trial periods and testing and what, not just closed testing but wider periods of testing. So a little surprised, but no, I'm quite enjoying it. I'm looking forward to I'm going to go and have another go at it later today. I think that's going to be a Sunday afternoon treat for me.
Well, I've got R to do, so it's not going to be me. Do you want to tell us about Commando's Origins?
Just very briefly, we now have a release date for Commando's Origins. It's coming in April. And these are the two games I was really looking forward to. Civ 7, because I haven't played one, and then Commando's Origins. Like I say, it's coming in April, which for me is fantastic. It looks really good. Apparently there's only sort of 10 missions, but I'm hoping that, you can play them through on say, like a normal difficulty and then replay it on a hard one. But this game looks great, and I think they've done a great job of bringing the feeling and the art style of the previous game up 20, 25 years later and really improving it. So I'm super keen to see what this is going to look like.
This is definitely one for you, not me. I didn't get on very well with the Commandos games at all. I did try the demo that you and I both played a couple of weeks back, so I don't think I can comment on this. But yeah, I'm glad you're excited for it.
This is right within my wheelhouse, 100%.
Main show, very, very quickly, because we've actually managed to go long on all these bits. The Civ 7 review is obviously what pushed us over the edge.
100%.
This is just a very quick thing that could have gone in the news, really, but I think it's probably worth just a little bit of thought, is that Microsoft did a bit of research, and workers that make extensive use of AI, to summarise, get really lazy.
Cal surprise, surely. Surely, though, if you're having your AI buddy summarize everything for you, and then you're having your AI buddy write responses and finesse your emails and do your PowerPoints and make your spreadsheets, surely you're going to get lazy, aren't you? Because you're just defaulting to the tool to help you rather than you think carefully about the words you're going to use and how you're going to lay out your PowerPoint. Or I don't know, that would be my view. So I think as life progresses and these co-pilots, these workers become more available to people, I think there is a problem at the minute in that some people get them in organisations, not everybody, because there's a pricing problem. But as life goes on and they become just baked into the OS like Apple's doing, surely we're all going to get a little bit lazy.
Well, it depends how you treat them, doesn't it? But of course, the fact that I don't need to think about this particular aspect of whatever the task is, replying to an email, doing an analysis, doing your research for you, whatever it might be, it is of course going to atrophy that thing. That if you don't exercise a thing, it goes away. Be it your muscles or be it your brain. And in this case, I think handing too much of this. I mean, Microsoft article is talking about critical thinking, and what constitutes critical thinking I could debate about. But I think you're right that if you're just letting it, as you say, answer your emails and do your things for you, you're not going to be able to have any depth about, is that result what I was looking for in the first place? Because if you don't even bother reading the email that it's generated, the chances are there might be something in there you didn't mean to say. And equally, if the output of your analysis of the work or your spreadsheet isn't quite what you were expecting, you're unlikely to have the ability to work through it and work out what it did and whether that was the answer you were actually expecting. So I think it's a problem.
Yeah, that's fair. That is fair. I do worry a little bit about this because you see it sometimes with, I'm going to pick on some support people I work with, that they don't understand enough about the basics of computing to sometimes inform their route to finding the solution. They follow the guide on how users got this error, these are the steps I'm going to do. But because they don't maybe understand how networking works or whatever it may be, or some low-level fundamentals, you don't always understand why you've got the answer you've got. And it will be the same here. If you don't understand everything that's gone on underneath, you're just relying on it. And people could get in trouble with this. Big decisions could get made because of misinterpretation by AI, and that is a concern, and people haven't gone and fact checked what the decision's been made on. You see it with spreadsheets all the time. People go, right, that's what the spreadsheet says, but have people gone and checked the calculation in the spreadsheet? Because we've seen that with, I think it was in 2020 when the Office of National Statistics sent some data in. Their calculation was on the wrong set of rows, and it was slightly off skew, and therefore they got the numbers wrong. So that is a big concern for me.
Check your sources. And if you go back and you think about that Apple advert for Apple Intelligence of the guy who was just letting Apple Intelligence answer his emails and everything, he was the lazy guy in the office that nobody trusted to do anything. Do you think Apple got the AI to write their blooming advertising? I mean, it's all endemic of the same thing.
Yeah, agreed. We are in that weird time, I think. I think AI will bring benefit, just not for most people. I just don't think we're feeling it yet. We need some more iterations.
Yeah, I agree. Somebody who's iterated is Matt Gemmell, who's gone back to the Mac. Do you want to tell us a little bit about this?
I think we should just comment on that lovely segue you've just done there. That was beautiful. Matt Gemmell. So Matt Gemmell is somebody that I followed. He lives he lives up in Scotland, and he's an author and he's a tech guy. And it's quite interesting because he went iPad only circa 10 years ago. And I've read a few of his books, to be fair. I don't know him, but very interesting. But he went iPad only, and very similar to me, had an arm with his iPad on it in front of him before multi-screen support came out, keyboard, mouse, etc. Used to pop the iPad off, on the lap, sit on the couch, which I've got here. So I was read this article last night. But he's gone back to the Mac. And I'm a little disappointed because I used to quite enjoy reading some of his articles and how he used the iPad and various apps. But the crux of the article is his wife basically had a 4K screen and he was looking at it in the space. So he then got one 4K screen similar to me, put his iPad connected up externally, started using that. And then not long afterwards went, I could just go and get a Mac now, because why am I forcing myself down the iPad route? And he's gone back to the Mac on a MacBook Pro, and he seems to be very happy with it. I think where he was using his iPad with the pencil and that, he's replaced the pencil piece with a dedicated piece of hardware that does note taking, with an e-ink screen. And so he's removed that bit away from the iPad, and then he's replaced what he was doing on the iPad with a Mac. And part of his reason for doing it, I've already mentioned he's an author, is he said the iPad was great when he was just authoring books, and he wanted that single focus ability, which the iPad is fantastic at. If you don't want clutter and lots of other stuff, it can be fantastic for that. But then when you're starting doing YouTube and exporting videos, that's where he said he was then struggling, because he had to have scripts to keep the iPad awake, stop it from locking, make sure that Final Cut didn't get backgrounded when it was doing an export or an upload. And where his life had got more complicated, the iPad just wasn't meeting his needs anymore. So that's part of his driver for going back to the Mac, as it were, which, like I say, is a bit of a shame, but I can understand why he's done it. And obviously the iPad OS back in 2016 was moving forwards a little bit quicker than what it is now, but it hasn't really changed fundamentally that much. I mean, getting the external display support's been great. Big feature. I love using that. But the OS just hasn't really progressed, hasn't got all the features the Mac's got. And I think we all thought we'd be further along that journey by now, but we're not, are we?
Yeah, I think it's a very thoughtful piece, which, as you've said, you'd expect from Matt Gemmell, really. And my link to this came via Matt Birchler, who is another thoughtful person who you'll find on YouTube in his writing and his own podcasts as well, who feels very similar to this, that wanted to go iPad only, and for a variety of reasons has just been brought back to the Mac. And I think a lot of people who'd gone iPad only, and Federico Viticci is another one, that the Apple Silicon Macs made this problem worse, because the advantages of the iPad, the always on, the connectivity of them, the feeling of being very embedded with the user interface because of its immediacy, were almost lost by how good the Apple Silicon Macs were, and they've only got better. And I think screens have got better, interface have got better, and it's those touch points, the pain points. For Matt, if you read the article, a lot of it's about keyboard focus. He's a writer, he never wants to have the focus stolen away from what it is that he's doing. And quite often, if you were using some of the tools that he talks about, that focus was taken away into another app when you were using it. And that annoys me slightly when it happens on the Mac, but it's infinitesimal. I can Command Tab and I'm back to what I'm doing instantly. And it shouldn't happen while I'm working on a thing. It's different if you're launching a bunch of apps on the Mac. Then if you're waiting for something, it will steal the keyboard focus. But if you're in the zone working away on a thing, it's not going to happen that you're going to have your keyboard focus taken away from you. And it's the death by 1,000 cuts thing. It's that kind of thing happens. It's the OS hasn't moved along as quickly as it has. It's the platform of the Mac has got better over the time. It's a little bit of freedom, dare I say, for what goes on and what you're able to do with the platform, and configure it the way you want it, not the way, well, as much as Apple allow you. Configure it the way you want it, not the way Apple insist on you having it, and being so... And then to sort of cap it all off, not seeing light at the end of the tunnel, that they're actually going to improve this little pain point that you can live with for now. But if I need to do the same repetitive action another 3,000 times between now and the point you may possibly update it at some point in the future, I think that might be the part of the problem.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's a really good article. I recommend people read it because his take's very good. He's very balanced. And I guess I've ended up somewhere in the middle. I think for me, I'm going to keep my Mac Mini as my desktop Mac, and I've actually quite enjoyed I do treat it a little as a laptop. I take it between my shed and the house, just so I'm around my family when I want to noodle around on it, but I can bring it down here when I need it. But I very much want to keep my iPad for when I'm going out and about. I think it is, for me, the right device for that. And last night I just grabbed my iPad, I took it off the keyboard, I sat on the couch, and I just scrolled through this article, and it was very nice having it there. But what I thought was interesting, the one point he made about the slowness on the iPad, because if you remember many years ago, they tried to make the Mac work more like the iPad and be instant on and do those things that they'd achieved on the iPad. It feels like now we've gone the other way, that the Macs, like you say, have really caught up, if not massively scorched off into the future, and left the iPad standing a little bit. The iPad hardware is absolutely fantastic. We know this. Like, it's just the way it's built, the speed, the screens. It's just the OS. They've ended up with cruft in the OS where they've half forked it from iOS. They need to have fully forked it and got on with it, but they haven't. When they renamed it iPad OS and said, right, we're going to go in a different direction, they've not really delivered on that promise, have they, sadly? So I'm a bit sad to see it. Like I said, I think for me, the better option is that hybrid world. I don't really want to lug around a big old Mac with me when I go to a coffee shop just for emails. I've made my life workflow on it, but I do want the ability to have more power when I'm back at home and sat in front of a desktop, which I am enjoying having a desktop again. I think I've really got into that with this Mac Mini. But Apple's hardware, whether you're buying an iPad or a Mac, is just phenomenal at the moment, isn't it? I think they've got their best hardware they've ever had, and they seem to be consistently updating it and moving it forward.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, there was one thing I meant to pick out. Safari needs to be micromanaged. Is that really a thing you find on your iPad?
No, I didn't really understand that. And even for me, that somebody that's half living in Apple land and half in Microsoft land, where I use Microsoft apps for all my corporate piece and generally Apple for my personal piece, I didn't really have a problem with Safari on the iPad. I think Safari on the iPad's really good. There's one setting I want them to introduce. You know, when you scroll on your iPhone or on your iPad, all the toolbars at the top shrink and get minimal. When I'm in extended desktop mode and I've got a 5K display, I don't want all that to shrink. I find that really annoying, and that's the one thing that the iPad does that I wish it didn't in Safari. I think the app's very good. I've always been a big Safari fan. I think it's very good on the iPad. It is largely like the Mac version.
I think you like it because you tolerate it and you're used to it. You're not used to the joy of Firefox or Chrome or Arc or Zen or all the hundreds of browsers I've recommended over the years.
Quite possibly. I've just always been the day Safari came out, I remember when it launched, and I don't know if they called it beta back then. I don't think it was even 1.0. I'm trying to remember. But I've been on Safari ever since it first came out. I've never left it.
I don't know what to say. Should we do an app of the week?
Yeah, let's do it.
So my app of the week is Book Player, which I will bring up for the YouTube viewers now. Book Player, which plays M4Bs, M4As, MP3s, and audiobooks. It's written by a guy called Gianni Carlo. And what it will do is we'll play your DRM-free audiobooks nicely, remember your chapters, do all that kind of stuff. It's got a lovely import screen where you can import from the Files app. You can transfer them on a wire. You can do all sorts of things. It's very flexible, or you can just airdrop them from another device. So it works really, really well. un-DRM'd all my Audible audiobooks a few years back, so I've got them sitting on my NAS. When I was going on a long trip a couple of weeks ago, I decided I wanted to take some audiobooks with me. I was going to install Amazon company Audible's thing. I bought those books a long time ago, so I'm going to make use of them. I did this little transfer, started playing, worked beautifully, worked with the Apple CarPlay on my Volvo, very happy with it, nice little app, well done.
That's quite interesting. So I'm a massive Audible fan. I think they've got so many good books. I buy all the tokens. I listen to a lot of Audible books, but it does worry me at some point, is the service ever going to go away? Am I beholden to Amazon hiking up the prices? I don't like the app that much. I think it's got some good pieces, but if ever you're trying to play a downloaded book and you haven't got much signal, it seems to struggle. I find it a little frustrating, if I'm honest. I would like just to play it, because I generally go and buy books on the website and then I download them to my library. So I think this is something I should take a look at.
Yep, I think you absolutely should check it out. You have bought those books. They're yours to do with as you will. And Amazon let you download the files, so all I did was take the DRM out. It's only for my use. I'm not sharing them anywhere, but they're for listening to my books that I bought, and this helped me do that, and I was very impressed with it.
Yeah. And I'm happy to buy them. I don't have a problem with that. I'd like to buy them and then just own them, please, and let me consume them how I want.
Lovely. Thing of the week.
Thing of the week. So this is a podcast, and I haven't done a podcast, I think, for a long time. It's Chris Harris's podcast. So Chris Harris presents on Top Gear, writes for various car magazines. Rod's struggling to find it, which is a bit annoying.
Your link doesn't work in the show notes.
That's all my fault, obviously. But I just talk around it for a second. So Chris Harris, you can see a picture of him there, but he's done a podcast with some of his friends. So there's 4 of them on this podcast. They all live here in the UK. And they just talk about cars generally and life stuff. And I just thought it was really good. I love cars. Their knowledge of different makes, models, is fantastic. They even talk about different colours of cars. What's the favourite red car that they've ever had, or favourite, stuff like that. So it's 100% up my street. But just a really nice, easygoing podcast, and just jumped very quickly to the top of my listen to this before listen to other podcasts list. And it's nice to have something that isn't tech. So that's what I would recommend. I apologise to everybody that they can't see Rod find it, so that's completely on me. I will go and find a better link for the show notes. It's on YouTube, but I do largely listen to it on my podcast player of choice.
There you go. I think we can call that a show, Chris.
It's a show. Thank you. And if anyone wants to get in contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot. He's also on Blue Sky. He's at g5maniac.psky.social. I'm on Mastodon. I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch on YouTube by going to the website and clicking on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.